back to my channel. My name is Rachel, that is the R in the RK Stumblingbear, and I'm a reader and a writer. And I'm back to do my February wrap-up. First off, I want to start off with Comey Can't Communicate. I read volumes 24 through 31. Not at the very beginning of the month, this was actually towards the end, right before I was going on vacation. Just needed a palate cleanser from everything that I was reading. I was reading a lot of sci-fi. I needed to break it up so I can finish some more sci-fi. And longtime viewers of the channel have already heard me talk about this, but the basic premise of Comey Can't Communicate is you have a high school student named Comey who's very beautiful but has a communication disorder. Her, first year in high school, meets a fellow classmate who recognizes that she's trying to communicate, and they become friends. And then he helps her with her goal to make 100 friends, and so it's just her making more friends. And now they're in their third year, and I would say that pretty much this whole school every student has some sort of communication disorder. I think the author is having fun and just making some bizarre people as well. All right, and then jumping into a lot of the other sci-fi that I finished. I finished After Atlas by Emma Newman. This was my pattern prompt for the January buzzword. And this is about a man named Carlos, or he goes by Carl, who is a detective, but he's like a slave detective. In this futuristic world, people can be owned by corporations. If they're really poor, they get rounded up and put into what's called a hot house and trained, and then their contracts are purchased, so basically slavery. But by being a detective, it's more of a cushy position for him, and he's sent to investigate a murder that is connected to his past in a religious cult. So you have all that going. If you've ever read Planetfall by Emma Newman, this is a companion novel to that. I have not actually read that one, but this is more about people who were left behind when that group went off into space. So I found it very interesting, and yeah, I've read many things by Emma Newman. I like her writing style. Then the only fantasy that I read in February was The City in Glass by Nevo. I'm not sure if this is a novella or just a short novel. This is more of like a literary fantasy discussing grief. We're following a demon who is a demon of a city. And at the very beginning of a book, a trio of angels comes down and destroys the city. And so the demon is now grieving. One of the angels has been cursed by her and so can't go home. So he comes back and forth. And we get to see I think the devil's name is Vitrine. Yeah. Then we get to follow Vitrine as she's cleaning up the ruins of the city at the same time as you get snippets of memories of what the city was before. The ending was not something I could predict. Was not quite expecting that, but it fits. It very much fits with this. This is a very lyrical writing. I think a lot of people have probably bounced off of it, not expecting it, especially if you are fans of her Singing the Hills cycle. This is written in a very different style. This style very much reminded me of Piranesi by Susanna Clarke, and even This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal Al-Mukhtar and Max Gladstone. It's very lyrical writing, very beautiful, while it's portraying basic emotions. And I really do say this is a conversation about grief and the stages that you go through. I then finished Yours Celestially by Al Hess. This is one of my self-published science fiction contest books. I was hoping to do a romance blog in this month of February, but that just did not happen. However, this was a priority read anyway, and so this is a sci-fi romance about an AI of a resurrection company that falls in love with one of the souls, and other people who have been resurrected just recently know that the AI is in love and want to help the AI. It's super cute, super queer, super neurodiverse. Yeah, if any of those are buzzword prompts for you, go for it. I then finished Remnant Population by Elizabeth Moon. This was a buddy read for me. And oh my gosh, I just love Ophelia. This follows a 70-year-old woman on a colony. And Ophelia is very much feels like she's trapped and constricted is the word, by her son, her one son that's living, by her community. And then they find out that their colony, the company that owns their colony, has lost a contract renewal, and now their colony has to move somewhere else. And Ophelia decides that she's not going. Not in a stubborn, you can't make me go, but more in a, nope, I'm just not going. And because she's older, she's put on the last shuttle to leave. And so she just hides in the woods, knowing that they're not really going to search for her. What they'll probably tell her son later is that she just died in transit. And so they leave, and then she is alone on this island, and she gets to grow into who she is. A 70-year-old woman has always had to conform to other people's expectations, and now she gets to be herself, and she finds that she's an artist. She is comfortable doing things in different ways, while at the same time there's certain things that was expected of her that she actually does like cooking and gardening. She likes those things, but she also likes to create bizarre outfits and maybe not wear clothes, or not wear clothes the way society thinks she should. And in this, she gets to have a first contact with the inhabitants of the planet that were not in the area that they originally settled. So they had been in that colony for years and never met the inhabitants. And some events happen later in the book where the inhabitants end up coming and finding her. So it's a very sweet story, about discovering yourself, being true to who you are, and then learning that you can grow and adapt in ways that you like, that you don't always have to be prescribed by somebody else. If you're ever looking for a book with a character who is older, this is the perfect one. Elizabeth Moon is also somebody I really enjoy their writing. And then I read Death of an Author by Nanedia Okorafor. This is one of my 2025 new release priorities. I have loved anything that Nanedia Okorafor has written. Well, maybe not loved, but I've always liked. And I find her take on everything interesting. And this is a contemporary-ish sci-fi where we're following Zelu, who is a paraplegic, has been since a child. And at the very beginning of the book, and this is what the synopsis tells you, she is fired, dumped. Her book that she's been writing for years is rejected. It's a perfect storm of everything being shit on her at the same time. And she finds out all about it while she is at her sister's wedding. While in her rage and grief and getting high, she writes a sci-fi book, which then starts everything else. This book is very much intersectional. You have Naija Americans, which the experience of Black Americans who have their families have more recently come from Africa, and so they don't have the slavery origins. It's a different experience in America for them. A lot of people will keep telling them, well, you're still African American, but they don't have the generational trauma of slavery, but they still experience a lot of the racism that everybody else is feeling. But then they have their culture and family that has certain expectations for them. So you have all of that dynamic. Zelu is disabled, and so you have the conversation of what is a good disabled person, and then what does society think a disabled person should be like. And if somebody is able to gain a little bit more mobility, or ease in their disability, should they take it, or are they supposed to stay a role model for how they have been? Amazing disability conversation going on. Just simply family dynamics. How do you see somebody? Do you continue to see somebody as they've always been, or do you allow them to grow? I don't want to say that the sci-fi is the trappings in this book, but it's very much only a small part. In Zaylu's time, I say contemporary-ish because we do have like autonomous cars that she uses to get around, which at least where I live don't exist. I know it's a technology that people have tried but hasn't been so successful, I don't think. And then we have some other technology which I know I've heard talked about, but I don't think it's actually to the point where Zaylu is able to use it in the book. So that's where it kind of makes it contemporary-ish, near sci-fi. And then we have the conversation about her book, which is called Rusted Robots. And you have Ankara and Igeli, who one likes having the body, and they are called a hume because their presentation of their robot is more human-like. And then the other one says, no, we don't need a body, we just can be our eye consciousness. Oh, and then that's another conversation that's in there, is about publishing and the translation of a book to a film media and what gets lost in translation, and how the author really has absolutely no say in that. The title comes into play a lot. So this is also a book where, like, besides all the conversations, not everybody likes Zaylu, and I think that is important for your reading experience. And if you like Zaylu, you might not like her family. That might irritate you. But yeah, it's one of those things, like, I think this is more on the cutting edge. It's having those conversations kind of like Goliath and Tochi Angibuchi, but it's not the same conversation, but it is playing with the dynamics of science fiction in order to have conversations. And I do think it's an important read, and I hope more people read it. Then, the very last book I finished this month was Our Lady of the Artilux by Andrew Gilsmith. It's another of my self-published science fiction books that I need to get read. And this is a very interesting blend of science fiction and religion. And it's not so much religion versus science fiction in this, which I love how Gilsmith has blended that. Now, the religions that were brought up in here, Catholicism, Islam, and the Uyghurs, I totally butchered that. I don't know anything about those religions, so I can't say about the portrayal of them, but I like that, again, it's not either religion's true or science is true. We've evolved into a world where people have these implants that help them in their daily life, and we have Artilux, which is the robotic AIs, and at the beginning, these robotic AIs have had a vision very similar to the Madonna, to the Lady Fatima, a religious apparition, and it's thrown the whole world into confusion. And so some people are trying to figure out if it was a hoax, some are trying to figure out if it was true, and what does that mean if it's true about the AI, because at this point AI are property. Like I said, I don't often see like a religion mixed with science fiction in such a way. So this actually ended up fulfilling a prompt on my WIC Readathon that I was not expecting, the spiritual religious theme. So there, I got that done. And then from February, I'm moving into the month of March, still working on Enigma. This one's not going well for me, guys, but I will finish it. Culinary Confessions by Joanne Lambo. This was another one that I was going to read for the failed romance vlog of February, but I still want to get it read because I'm also reading this for the Black AuthorTuber readathon that Margaret Pinard runs. And then my last priority read for the self-published science fiction contest for the current leg I'm on is St. Elspeth by Wick Welker. I expect those books to be at the top of my March TBR. I hope February has been a good reading month for you. I'd love to know what your favorite read of February has been. And If you stuck around, I have a fun video from my vacation at the end. Thank you, and have a good day.
No, I'm right here.